Well, hello, good afternoon, good
Morning.
morning, good evening, wherever you are. And before we dive in, I think it might be a helpful exercise to just take three deep breaths together. I always like to do this before any session or any workshop, and I like to think of it as one breath for the sky above us, one breath for the earth below us, and then one breath for us in the here and now. So I just invite you to close your eyes and take these three deep breaths. And as I'm doing that, I'm also remembering that this is something that we didn't do in the humane marketing circle to begin the calls. So that's a really nice connection back to that energy and to that space. And also to the number three, which is a number that we associate with harmony. And that's really something that we'll be talking about today is bringing ourselves into harmony and bringing ourselves into coherence with the world around us. And that world includes the sky. So what we'll do is we'll look at the lunar cycle. And the lunar cycle is the relationship between the sun and the moon. And we know that the sun is the source of all of the light in our solar system, and that the moon reflects back the light of the sun. So we can't look at the moonlight without also thinking about the sunlight. And it's the dance between these two planets, we call them planets in astrological terms, that really is the fundamental rhythm of life. It still amazes me that when we look up in the sky, the sun and the moon are the same size, that the earth would be so perfectly positioned, the moon so perfectly positioned, the sun so perfectly positioned that we end up with these two spheres that mirror each other. And that to me is just another emphasizing point on how there is order in what might appear to be the chaos of our lives. There is always this underlying order. And when we know what that order is, and we know how to consciously live in line with it, our world becomes more harmonious. It becomes more coherent. We find that we're doing things at the right time, in the right way. And we're always living in line with the lunar cycle, whether or not we know it. Nature lives in line with the lunar cycle. You see even the tides, and what are we made of? Mostly we're made of water. We know that the moon affects water. Of course, the moon is going to affect us. We see how it works with certain plants, with fish, with blooms. Even with us, there are more births at a full moon than there are at a new moon. So there's evidence of this lunar cycle and how it affects us biologically. It also affects us on every other level because anything that's affecting us physically is also affecting us mentally, emotionally, spiritually. That's just one of the ways that we can notice it. But even our energetic patterns, that moving between that time of stillness and the time of fullness, which is inherent over the course of a month. And we know what that's like when our body feels full of energy, when it feels vital, when it feels ready to go, and when it's calling for us to rest. And when we work with the lunar cycle, we can recognize that, we can tap into it. And for me, it's not just about working with the lunar cycle in the sky as it happens every month. It's about recognizing the rhythm of the lunar cycle as happens all around us all the time. So I think even about this conversation, there's a rhythm to it. There's an introduction. At the beginning, we haven't had the experience yet. We don't know what's happening, but we know that things are possible. Could it go this way? Could it go that way? How am I going to learn? And then we get more of a sense of this is what I'm learning, this is what the experience is about. And then we really start to tap into it and we start to get involved and we start creating something. Then we have these aha moments, these fullnesses, these realizations. And then we start releasing. Then we start sharing. Oh, well, this is what I got from this. This is what you got from this. This is what I'm going to take away from this. And we go back into that space of internal wisdom. That's what happens over a meal. It's what happens over a conversation. It's what happens over a day at work. There's always that rhythm that's present where we're first arriving, we're moving towards this space of fullness, and then we're releasing and we're coming back into that space of emptiness, that nurturing space of emptiness. So I say this not just about the cycle as it exists in the sky, which is a thing, and we'll talk about specifically today, but also about embracing the cycle in all of the projects of your life and all of the aspects of your life, and that includes business.
Can I ask you a
And
question, Patrick?
of course,
I'm so curious about the plants. So how do they react to the lunar cycle?
there's some plants that will flower specifically around the full moon.
Mm.
And you'll also notice with growing times, I use this with plants that are in my house, where there that first week of the lunar cycle, first 2 weeks of the lunar cycle, which is the waxing phase. That's a time when everything is able to take in more nourishment and to grow. And if you were interested in pruning a plant, then you'd want to do it in that second part of the cycle. So there's even that how they respond to us and how we nurture them. So if you were going to offer plant food and nourishment, you'd want to do it in that earlier part when the plant's in a better place to be able to take it in, versus that latter part is much better for pruning.
That reminds me of that. There's this farmer calendar, right? The Great Almanac or something, at
Almanac
least
Yeah,
in
the
Europe.
farmer's almanac.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And so I'm sure that's based on on the lunar cycle as well, somehow.
It is. And I saw
Okay.
some research
Wow.
recently about eclipses. So those points when the moon and the sun are aligned, that trees, hours before an eclipse, trees all come into some shared electromagnetic resonance that's
Wow.
measurable before
Mm.
the eclipse occurs. So that forest is always tapped into these cosmic rhythms.
Mm. It's beautiful.
So it's just so fascinating. I think this is something we're just starting to explore more scientifically so that we can understand exactly what is happening from that rational perspective, but something that we've known for a long time. Planting, like you say, the farmer's almanac. When do you want to plant? You want to plant around the new moon
Mm.
because we know that that's when the energy for growing is there.
Hmm.
And then there's some parts. I think there's some algae and there are certain flowers that are really keyed in that you can see every month will be present in some way. Parasites too,
Mm.
interestingly, will also get much more active at the full moon.
Patrick, um, you will love this if you don't know this, but I'm involved in coral restoration for, all the dying coral that's happening in the ocean. And the the coral actually spawns at the full moon. Like they have to, like the scientists are going down and finding ways to collect in order to start to bring them to labs and grow them. And it's all around that's, I was just fascinated when I saw your talk because I'm like, I want to learn more about that because you're right.
Really?
Yeah. So it's a big deal and it's an explosion of
Wow.
spawning in the because coral are animals and so the risk right now, we have a terrible thing going on in the oceans where they are dying due to the temperatures heating and the acidity of the water. And scientists are doing everything they can. So they are trying to collect and work with a bunch of different ways of helping them survive. They're having trouble though figuring out how to do it, to be honest. But they're collecting them on the full moon.
Hmm.
So I
Wow.
yeah, and it's supposed to be quite the show,
Oh
right?
yeah, I can imagine like the light coming in through the
Yeah,
water. Oh my God,
yeah,
magical. Yeah.
yeah. So very cool.
That
Yeah.
is so cool. That's also really interesting. I was just going down to our front door because our gardener is outside in the front, and I just realized she needed to get back in. So it's like, as we're talking about it, I'm having like this live synchronicity about things that are growing and being shed. So, and another wonderful synchronicity is that there's a new moon today. There's a new moon that
Oh,
happened about an hour ago. So
oh,
we're very
Crazy.
much in the beginning energy of a lunar cycle, and I picked
Mm.
this time without knowing that there was going to be
I
a
was
new
gonna say,
moon.
did you pick this time? Yeah.
Yeah, I picked it and then I only later realized that so
Wow.
this to me is more evidence that we're always living in line with these cycles, whether we know it or not. But as soon as we become conscious of it, then it takes on this magical flavor to me, that reminder of how connected the universe is, of how we really are all in tune with these cycles, no matter what. And when we know it, then we can invite that energy to work with us in a more meaningful way.
Mm, yeah. We did a little activity I called the Ubuntu tree, this idea that we are all one, right? And I have people think about all the family members and ancestors, and but also creatures of this earth, and sun, moon, stars, planets, etc. And so yeah, this idea that we are impacted and we are not impacted, that sounds like a negative thing, but that we are influenced and kind of inside symbiosis with what's happening up there is just, yeah, it's mind blowing.
It is.
Mm.
And the more that we embrace it, the more that we allow it, the more true it becomes. And the more powerful we become. That's one of the things I really think about when we work with some of these cycles is when we do things with right timing,
Mhm.
they land in a better way. Much like if we're looking at oral, when do we want to do this? When is the right time to arrive? You could try to do this at other times, and it's not that you couldn't do it, but it wouldn't have the same results. And that feeling of success, because to me, the more I think about success, the more it's a feeling. And that feeling of success comes with that alignment that's
Mhm.
present when we are connected on that deeper level.
Are you going
So
to share, Patrick, how you discovered this in your own life, and your how you evolved to know all this, or not? I don't want to. I don't
well,
want to. I don't want to ruin what you're planning on. But I'm curious.
that's okay. I'm happy to be open. I mean, I'm an astrologer, so this to me is part and parcel of my work. And over the years, I have done probably 10 or 11 lunar cycle workshops specifically on tuning in with the different phases of the moon with groups of people to look at the creative cycle. And it amazes me every single time that not only, I mean, I know this, and I am still every time so struck. It's like it's the first time. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening there. It's just so perfect. Well, of course this is that. Well, of course this is that. So it's like I'm constantly proving it to myself or reminding myself that this is a legitimate phenomenon. So for me, it's just a simple matter of tuning in. And I think it's something that any of us can do. And the more that you tune in, the more evidence that you gather to give your rational brain proof. And then once your rational brain is happy, then it gives the rest of you that opportunity to tune in even more. So it's this wonderful interplay between that sort of bigger connected space and then also maybe the more focused linear way of living, which we as humans get to enjoy both of. So it is simply a matter of noticing. So that's one of the things that we can talk about today as we move through the cycle and the month is giving you an invitation for how you can do this over the course of the next month. So I've pulled out the dates for the next lunar cycle as it's happening in the sky. And I would invite you and anyone who's watching to just take a moment and just tune in to some creative project, a life project. I think of everything in our lives as a creative project. But I use the word creative because the lunar cycle is the rhythm of creation. And I like to think of business as another way of creating. So it could be a business idea, a business plan, something that's germinating, a business project, because we're talking about business and we'll use that paradigm to explore the lunar cycle, but it doesn't have to be. So I encourage you to just take a few moments and just tune into, well, what's a project that over the next month feels like it's bubbling up and doesn't need to be a forcing, and there could be more than one that shows up, but just giving yourself some time to just think, huh, well, this is what I'm feeling pulled towards this month. This is where my attention is. As I mentioned, this is the perfect time to do this with the energy that's present as we are recording this with a new moon. And that really is what the new moon is all about. The new moon is about what is possible. It is the domain of potentiality. It's this liminal space. And the new moon, which I sometimes think of as the no moon, it's when the moon isn't visible in the sky. because the moon is sitting right there with the sun. So it's a powerful alignment of those two energies, but it's not a time when we can see the moon. And moonlight brings things to life in our external world. So without that light of the moon shining on the outside, what that means is it's shining on the inside. So that to me is that space of potentiality, this liminal space of, well, anything could be possible. And that's really the energy of the new moon. The new moon is, well, what's possible now? Very often, if you follow the lunar cycle in maybe more pop astrology, people talk about the new moon as a time to set intentions. And while I understand that, at the same time, the new moon to me is more generous than that. The new moon to me is more a sense of, well, anything is possible. Intention is a container, and the new moon doesn't need a container. The new moon is really, it's this, if I thought about it in a business project, it would be the brainstorming stage. It would be we arrive in a room and there is an empty whiteboard and there are some pens that are out. And this is where we begin. We begin in the space of emptiness. So enjoying the dream, enjoying the emptiness, enjoying what is possible to me is the best way to work with that new moon energy, to be in this creative incubator. And so when I think about working with the new moon, and we get the new moon we get all of these cycles for about 4 days or so over the course of a lunar month. I'll break this lunar cycle up into 8 different phases. So each one is about 4 days. And that new moon, again, it's the energy of let's explore. So this would be that moment when you're walking into this room. Maybe it's just you there, maybe there's colleagues, maybe there's friends, and you're just going to take anything that comes to mind and you're going to write it up on the board. So whatever it is that floats through your mind, unedited, unfiltered, just go straight on the board. Just, well, that's possible. Oh, okay, that's also possible. Well, that's possible too. Well, that's possible. Yes, that's possible. Yes, this is possible. It's just this continuing affirmation of what is possible. This isn't the time, the new moon isn't the time to narrow it down. There is a time when we want to do that, when we want to focus our energy. This isn't it. This is really the embracing. And this is a stage I find when the moon is darker. I find both when the moon is darker and when the moon is waning, that these times are less celebrated in our current culture, especially the business culture, which is very much I want growth and I want light. Our business culture is full moon. I want maximum growth. I want peak performance. I want it all of the time. When you think about peak performance, well, what percentage of the mountain is its peak? And it's the same thing with the lunar cycle. What percentage of the lunar cycle is the full moon? It's one moment. The moon is full at one moment. It's an instant. It's not full all the time. We can't expect ourselves to be running on the full moon all of the time. So I especially take tenderness and care when I talk about those phases when the moon is a little bit darker, so that we can really allow for that potential and allow for the rest. The new moon is not a time of high energy. The new moon is a time of internal focus. It's a time of darkness. And that doesn't mean we can't feel energized and we can't feel excitement about things that are coming through, but it's not about manifesting. It's not about creating in the external world. It's about the internal space. So I always like to make things experiential. So if you just close your eyes and maybe imagine that you have a sphere, that you're just holding a sphere in between your hands, just about this size. And just imagine that this sphere is dark. Imagine that this sphere is like the blackness of the night. And just feel what it's like to hold darkness. And because this sphere is dark, there's room in it. It's spacious. You can put light into this sphere. You can grow things here. There's a generosity. There's an openness. There's an invitation. So just let that image of the sphere stay with you, and we'll keep working with it as we move through the different phases. So the next phase that we get after the new moon, and I want to be clear too that there's no set number of phases to the moon. We're dividing a circle or a cycle into these 8 phases so we can better understand it. But it's not like there's one clear defining line where we move from one into the other. Sure, we could make that line, but it's fluid. The moon is always moving. So even if we tried to define what is the exact moment the moon is full, you could get down to microseconds. We just know this is before and this is after, but there's not really this moment where you can very clearly hold it and identify it. You know it happens, but we also want to embrace the fluidity. So I want to be clear that as the moon moves between these different phases, that it's soft around the edges. It's not like I have these 4 days in the new moon and then I have these 4 days in the waxing crescent. It's like the moon moves from the new moon to the waxing crescent, and at some point we call it a crescent. So just embracing that fluidity of approach. So the next phase that we'll get to, and I'll use this month as an example. So today we have the new moon. And on Saturday, June 28th, we will have the waxing crescent. And the waxing crescent phase is when the moon is a quarter full in the sky. And here in the northern hemisphere, the moon grows from the right to the left. So you'll see that kind of little crescent sliver on the right-hand side of the moon if you were to look up and see it in the sky on Saturday. And the crescent phase is when we're moving into it's almost a place where we're starting to channel our creative energy, where that's really what we're doing. It's becoming a little bit more dynamic. We're starting to have more focus. There's more light, so we know more about what we're doing. We're making more choices about what we want to do externally. We're taking that internal space of possibility, we're shedding some light on it, and now we're having a sense of, all right, well, this is what I want to create externally. This is what I want to create in the world from this, what I want to bring into the world. So if I went back to this business example, if I went back to this room where there's a whiteboard. And now we've had the new moon, we've had the brainstorming phase, the idea shower. We've written everything onto the board. And now we're actually looking at it with a little bit more discernment. Now we're maybe kind of going through and we're circling things that we're interested in. Like, okay, I've identified all that's possible here, all the stuff that I could do. And now I'm actually noticing, oh, well, that seems interesting. And that also seems interesting. And that seems interesting. So there is a narrowing, and that narrowing is that channeling of energy. That now some of those possibilities are like seeds that won't grow. A tree might, how many seeds does an oak tree, acorns does an oak tree put out every year, and how many of them actually turn into an oak? They're not all meant to turn into an oak. It's okay. Some of them are just acorns. Some of them are just ideas. So we want to let go of the things that aren't holding our interest. And it's just that natural way that we do that. We just choose. This seems interesting. And that seems cool. And maybe we have a sense too of what our passion is as we're doing that. Maybe we notice some of the themes that are connecting these different things that we're circling. Maybe we're getting more insight on what the nature of our project is. Maybe it's like, oh wow, actually, I'm realizing as I'm circling, all of these things that I'm circling are about greater visibility, or they're all about this one particular part of my business. Like maybe it's like I've just started writing and I want to get my writing out. And I'm feeling like this really joy in writing. And I've noticed that all the things I've circled have something to do with writing, or they all have something to do with working in a group or a particular group. It's interesting if you use astrology and you look at where these lunar cycle points happen in your personal birth chart, you can also get a clue for, oh wow, well this is an area to look. These are going to be some of the themes and topics that are relevant or that are coming up. So there's even more specificity available. But I truly believe that wisdom is always available from the inside. So even noticing as you're circling, oh well, this is a theme. This is a topic. This is something that's really drawing my attention. So if you go back to the sphere now to give your sense of give yourself a sense of what it feels like when you add more light. So if you go back to that sphere you imagined, that was just this pure black energy, maybe just feel yourself pouring light into it. And maybe just fill it up 1/4 of the way so that the sphere now has this crescent shape in it. And first, feel what it's like to put your light into this. Notice how the darkness responds to the light, how the light responds to the darkness. And notice what it's like to hold this, to hold a sphere that's 1/4 lit. Maybe there's some more clarity here. Maybe there's more energy. Maybe there's more passion. Maybe there's more enthusiasm. So just keeping that shape in your mind, those feelings. Then we'll talk about the first quarter moon. So about 4 days later, on Wednesday, July 2nd, the moon moves out of that waxing crescent phase and into the first quarter. And again, this is a process. Over that waxing crescent to first quarter experience, we get closer and closer to this first quarter energy, which is really this time of choice. The first quarter to me is, all right, new moon, I set out all the ideas. Waxing crescent, I circled the ones that resonated with me. Now I'm picking one. There's one of these that's really calling my name. So if I thought about a time to set goals and to set clear intentions for what I want to realize, it would be this. It would be this moment. And the first quarter is often associated with the word crisis, a crisis of growth. And I use that not in a negative sense, but in the traditional meaning, which is much more a time at which it becomes clear that change must emerge. And at that first quarter moon, we really feel that growth spurt energy. We really feel, all right, there's more of me to pour in. There's more of me to invest right now. Things are changing. I'm picking this. I'm focusing this. This is the project that I want to work on. And this would be when, if let's say if we were doing a writing project or if we had something that we wanted to bring to the market, this would be really, we're creating the product. We know what it is. We're making the brief. We're doing the rough draft. We're bringing it into the world. That's that glorious first quarter energy. And this is the time that gets maybe a little bit more love in our world, in our society, because this is a transition point from the moon being mostly dark to mostly light. The first quarter moon is halfway lit in the sky. And our culture celebrates light and it celebrates growth. So from the first quarter to the full moon is often that time when we might be most aligned to with the system and what the system loves and celebrates and wants. So while we could bemoan that, we can also notice that this is when there's also a lot of support. If you're wanting to reach out to people and you have a rough draft and you have a clear idea and you have an intention and you have a focus and you want to grow, this is also a time when the market can easily come and meet you. So we might as well recognize that as well. So it's not the end all be all, it's just one part. And it's the part that's very often focused on for now. So again, that first
Question,
quarter.
Patrick.
Oh, sure.
So how the first crescent is just like a little slither, right? So the first quarter, because we see it two-dimensional. Does that mean like it's half of the moon
It's
that we
that.
see, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
It
Yeah.
is. And it's kind of funny that we call it a quarter, but I think it's
Yeah.
because it's a quarter of the lunar cycle, but not a quarter of the moon.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, the quarter of the moon is interestingly the crescent. So
Right.
thank you for asking. And it's, yeah, and it would be
Yeah.
the here in the
Yeah.
northern hemisphere, it's the right half of the moon. In the southern hemisphere, it's the other half, which is also really interesting to notice that that sort of reminds me too of like even the way that we see growth and how it's happening, it's all a matter of perspective.
Right. So if you're okay, you're in the global south, you actually see it the other way around. Hmm.
Exactly. Looking at the moon from the other way.
I don't know if
But
I've
it has
ever
the
seen
same
that.
power. It has the same,
It
yeah.
does, exactly. It has the same power.
Hmm.
Like everyone's getting a first quarter, but how that first quarter looks.
Yeah.
So even that, I was like, that is so fascinating to remember that the moon doesn't look the same depending on
Right.
where you are.
Hmm.
Also very lunar because the moon is unlike the sun, which is the same size, shines in the same way, rises, it sets. The lunar rhythm, it comes and it goes.
Hmm.
So if we go back to that sphere, it's that sphere that's now a quarter full. Just imagine holding that. And now just imagine filling it with light so that it's halfway full. And again, just notice what it's like to be with this sphere that's half light and half darkness, how the light and darkness are working together, and what's available here. Maybe even feeling that push into the light. That now that you see that it's halfway lit, maybe there's even this real enthusiasm for, wow, look at this. I've lit this halfway. I can keep this going. Maybe noticing the feeling like I know more about what I'm doing now. I'm more connected. I see it. I see it. It's here and I want to go for it. That's that energy of the first quarter. I see it and I want to go for it. So it's a real creative, we could call it a creative push, but I want to use push as more an invitation. So a moment of creative inspiration. And then over the next few days, the moon gets lighter and lighter until it hits the gibbous phase. And the gibbous phase is a moon that is three-quarters lit in the sky. That will happen for us with this lunar cycle on Sunday, July 6th. And the gibbous phase to me is, all right, well, I've got my rough draft. I've put it all together. And now I'm going to go get some feedback. So I'm going to go take this and I'm going to do some focus groups. Or I'm going to take this and I'm going to ask some colleagues or some friends to review it. I'm going to start refining. I'm going to start asking some questions about what this is. What am I creating? How could it be better? How could I invite more participation? And you notice the difference here. When we had the waxing crescent and the new moon's waxing crescent, it's very much an internal exercise. If we're just seeing what's possible. And now we're really wanting to bring this into the world. So now I want to refine my focus further. I want to channel it even more. I want to make this the best that it can, the best that it can be. And that gibbous is excellent energy for questioning. It's one of the things that I really like to work with is just the, well, how could this be better? And it's not going back to the drawing board. It's taking what we have and it's molding it. It's shaping it. It's filling it out.
How are you spelling this? Give us.
Spelling it, it's Gibbous. And this is the waxing gibbous. There's also a waning gibbous on the other side, which has another name. But yes, thank you for asking.
And what would be the date now that this gibbous comes into?
So it'll be Sunday, July 6th. And there's often a
Um,
softening. There's that the first quarter can feel like it's an inspiration point, and it's also a very activated time. And the gibbous is more, that the difference between, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to sit down and I'm writing this rough draft. There's a big difference between the feeling of that energy and I have a rough draft and now I'm sharing it for comments.
I added manually the new moon and the full moon to my Google Calendar. But now I'm wondering, is there an extension or an app or something that adds the moon cycles to our Google Calendar? Are you using anything like that?
That's a great question. I have journals that are printed that have those
Mm-hmm.
moon
Mm-hmm.
calendars. I don't have anything in my calendar as it's set
Yeah.
up. I
It
imagine it
really
exists.
helps me, like to just have the new moon and the full moon, because
Mhm.
otherwise we're not aware of it, right? Like, okay, the full moon, yes, maybe, but and so it'd be great to have like, yeah, I'm gonna look for it, and maybe you can too. If we find something, we will share it with each other.
Yeah. Absolutely. I know from my moon groups that there's a huge variety of moon apps that are out there that you could look on directly. I don't know. So if you wanted to have a ritual of checking every day to say where is the moon or what phase it's in, that's possible. Getting into your calendar, I'm not sure. But I
Just
kind of
because we're
imagine
combining, because we're
mm,
doing business with the moon, it just makes so much
it
sense to
does.
have it in your business calendar. Um, yeah. So,
Absolutely. That's a great point.
mm,
I'll ask too. I have a moon group now, so I'll ask them
yeah.
if they're aware of
Hmm.
any tool.
A moon group. That sounds so cool.
You're welcome to join.
Yeah,
So,
do share the info with Anita if she's interested.
I
of
love it.
course.
Yeah. I'm not leaving. My kitty needs some water, so I'm listening. Okay.
Okay. So, if we want to just come back to that sphere that we've got and just imagine filling it with light until it's three-quarters full. And just getting a sense for what this is like, what the energy's like with this proportion of light and darkness. Maybe there's almost even a sense of relief of, wow, look at how full it already is. Maybe there's a curiosity of, ooh, what am I going to do with this next quarter? What kind of light am I going to put in? What's it going to look like when it's full? So I find nice about this gibbous phase. It's both this marveling at, well, look at what I've already created, and also, ooh, what am I going to do with this next part? I still got more light to put in. What would be the finishing touches that I could invite into this sphere, into this project? Just getting a feel for that, and then let's talk about the full moon. So this is perhaps the most famous moon phase that we're familiar with because it is the moon at its brightest, and the moon can be arresting when it is full. And the full moon, as it sits opposite the new moon, is not so much about what's possible and what the potential is. It's more about what's here, what we created, what actually came in to our physical reality, into our experience. The full moon is a time of revelation. It's like a grand reveal. And if I thought about our business project, this would be that time of I'm ready to show what it is. Like tonight is the debut. Like here it is. Like this is what I've created. Like check it out, world. And it's not a moment where we are bringing something into creation. It's a moment where we're realizing what we've already created. That first quarter moon is really that invitation in that, wow, like this is what I'm going to create. This is the rough draft I'm going to make. This is, wow, look at what I did create. Look at the insight that's here. And it often has that feeling of things are coming together. I get it now. That sense making, which our brains are so wonderful at doing, the storytelling of, wow, this is the culmination point. It's really here. So I tend to think of the action points, and what I'll do if I'm coaching is I'll focus on the first quarter and third quarter moon as more action points. And the new moon and the full moon is more realization points. The new moon as a realization of what's possible, and the full moon as a realization of what's here. So this is what I manifested. This is what I can see. That the light reveals. So if we go back to that sphere, and you just imagine now that you're filling that sphere with that last quarter of light until you have this sphere of gleaming light. Notice what this feels like. There's nothing that you need to do here. You don't need to put anything else in. You've already done that. You've already filled it with light. It's just letting it shine. When you look in that sphere, it shows you the fullness of what you've created. Even if you imagine taking that sphere around in your life, how much more it's going to help you see. That really is that full moon moment of what can I see now? So that full moon is peak brightness. And it's also a shift when we move from the waxing phase of the lunar cycle into the waning phase. So after that moment of the full moon, the moon is now starting to release. We're now going to be letting that light come out of the sphere. So over those next few days, it's really that feeling of, wow, this was so full. Look at what I've seen. Look at what's been revealed. And breathe out. And you know what that's like when you've worked on something, when you've really poured your creative effort into something, and then it's manifest before you. There's no push to do anything else. There's no inspiration to do anything else. Now it's, well, this has been birthed. Here it is. It lays before us, and now it's separate from me. Now it's in the world. If you imagine it's a book that, let's say it's a book that you were writing, now the book is in the world. You published the book. It's there. You launched your product. You put your website up. You made that group you wanted to make. It's there in the world now. That's full moon energy. There's nothing that needs to be done. It's now time to start letting this have a life of its own and to start removing your attachment from it. So that's what we start to do over those days after the full moon. And then we get to this next phase of the moon, which is either called the waning gibbous or the disseminating phase. And this for us will happen on Monday, July 14th. And this is what I would call the marketing moon. If I were to think about what phase of the lunar cycle is most associated with marketing, it would definitely be the disseminating because we have the product now, and now I'm letting it come into the world. And the disseminating, it's much like the word itself. It's taking this and bringing it into the world. It's disseminating it. So it's traveling around to, this would be in a time in your project, your business life cycle. Oh, I have this product. I've launched it. Now I got to let people know. So I'm going to travel around. I'm going to do a little, it's like a road show. I'm going to do a little stand here, and I'm going to be a marketplace there. And I'm going to send out this post on social media, and I'm going to email this person. And I'm going to let the world know about this. That's really what we feel at the disseminating moon. So it's the ideal time if you're marketing something to work with that energy. The moon is still lit. It's still more than halfway lit, so it's still externally focused. And it's that waning energy. So we're also withdrawing our creative energy from making something new, and we're actually kind of letting that project in and out have a life of itself. That's what I think of when I think about that release, is I'm removing my attachment from the project. I've been investing, 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 and now I'm letting it have a life of its own. It's like a baby. You invest and you invest and you invest, and you want it to have a life of its own. You want it to be independent. It has its own energy to work with. So you're drawing your creative life force back in, and you're letting it have more independence, have more of a life. You're letting it take off.
Patrick, would this be where you would say you personally feel like you are releasing a little bit and slowing down a little bit and resting more? Or is that a connection that you have?
I'd say releasing definitely. And it is, again, as you say, like we're in that waning phase. So starting to feel the peak of the energy has passed. We're starting to draw more into ourselves. We'll get more into deeper rest as the moon gets darker. And certainly, so I'd say yes, like you would be starting to feel more restful, more released. Because the moon is still more lit, it's still got enough energy. And I think about that external orientation. So it might be, yes, I'm releasing, rather than going around the first stage. Or you think about the waning, the waxing gibbous. That's very much like I want to go get input, I want to go get feedback, I want to draw things in. This is more I want to get it out. Like I got this product. I'm going to go and I'm going to display it here. I'm going to display it there. I'm going to sell it there. I'm going to sell it here. I'm like, it is so, it does have that feel to it. And so if you go back to that sphere, maybe you could tune in to what it's like to kind of have this. So if you got the sphere that's fully lit, and just draw back in a quarter of that light, just drawing that back into your body. And first, just noticing the difference between what it was like to put light in and what it's like to pull light out, to draw it back in. And just noticing what it's like to hold a sphere that's three-quarters of the way lit, noticing that some of that darkness is there now. There's still plenty of light, there's still energy, there's still a lot more to release. Noticing what that light wants to shine on, how it wants to release. Also, that connection with marketing, which is really sharing our light. So we know what we made, and now it's about releasing. It's about releasing that light into the world. And so we get a few days with that disseminating moon, and then we come to the third quarter moon. And that will happen for us on Friday, July 18th. And that third quarter moon, much like the first quarter moon, feels like it's another choice point. And this choice point here is, all right, I've done the roadshow, I've gone out, I've shared this work, I've disseminated it, I've distributed it, I've put it out there. And now it's time for me to pull back. Now it's time for me to realize, well, what went well and what didn't go so well? What have I learned? Now we're starting to, again, draw that more internal focus. So that third quarter is when we go from the moon being mostly light to mostly dark. So this is that more reflective, taking on that reflective tone of, all right, I've done the project. I brought it out. Now I want to know, what have I learned from it? So that third quarter is really that sense of, well, I want to realign. What did I set out with? What was my feeling when I set out on this? What went well? What aligned with that, and what didn't go well? And what came up along the way that I learned about myself? And how can I integrate that? It's really a time of integration, active integration and realignment. Because this would definitely be a time when you would be having meetings, with your colleagues to see what happened. All right, well, what were the sales? What were the numbers? Like, how did the project go? How many people joined? How many people showed up? This would be that time to know, like, to have that feeling for, well, how did this meet the world? And this would also be that time to notice, if you're not feeling successful, what can you let go of? Because you deserve to feel successful. This is an exercise in creativity. And fundamentally, that's what every lunar cycle is. And that's what our lives are. It's an exercise in creativity. So there's no good or bad. There's just the feeling. And this to me, as we move back into the darkness, we become much more aware of the feeling and what's happening on the inside. So that third quarter, much like that first quarter, can be a time when we really feel like, ooh, there's some stuff to be done here. It's like I really noticed, like, okay, like I was hoping for this and that happened. So I got to realign myself. I got to realign myself with success,
Mhm.
whatever that means. And it can be on both sides. It might be, something didn't sell as well or the product didn't go as much as you wanted, or it might be that suddenly that it was a huge hit and it took over in ways that you hadn't fully expected. And now you got to revisit, all right, well, what is it that I want to create here? Is this what I want? Do I want it to continue to grow in this way? Did I get that satisfaction with this project? Was this just a one-time exercise? Was it a pop-up? Like every month is like a pop-up. So noticing, all right, what's calling me from this? What did I learn? And how can I contribute to those longer term business visions or creative visions that I might have?
Patrick, I'm really sorry, but I have another call at the half hour. And so just because of the recording, um, I will need to stop it and go on the other call. So do you we have 5 minutes, so
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
just
five
go with
minutes.
the last one, last,
That's it. That's
and
exactly
I
it. We've
just
got
can't
this.
stay for the
No, that's
extra
it.
conversation, which I'm sorry.
No, it's no worries. 5 minutes is perfect.
Yeah.
We're on time. There's one more.
Yes, exactly. Let's go to that one.
Okay, so just tune into that sphere again. That sphere, that third quarter sphere. So you just
Mhm.
imagine you're holding that sphere, and now it's halfway lit. And just feel what it's like to be back in this space, noticing the interplay between the darkness and the light, and that invitation to release, to let more of the light go, to make a choice to let go here. And then as you do that for the next few days, you end up in the dark or balsamic moon phase, which will come to us on Monday, July 21st. And the dark moon phase is perhaps my favorite phase of the moon and the lunar cycle, because it really is this deep rest and integration that you mentioned, Anita. It's
Yes.
where the moon is less than halfway lit and it's going into darkness. So this is going back into that internal space. So this is you've been out, you've had this idea, you've created it, you've shared it, you've reviewed it, and now it's just time to go to bed. Now it's just time to come home. You've had a full day, and it's that moment when you're kind of you're tucking yourself in at night, and you just think, well, there's nothing for me to do here. There's nothing for me to do here but dream, to just let go. And it's that time when we really feel ourselves integrating, we feel ourselves resting. And it's also a time of wisdom because we've had this experience now. We've learned, we've grown, we've learned more about ourselves, we've offered something to the world. And now here we are, back in ourselves. And this is also that time when we often start to get visions for what might come next, when we really let ourselves calm down, when we really let ourselves cool off. We start to have a sense again of, wow, well, this is what's possible. I've shown myself that something more is possible. So I've expanded, I've grown. So I love that dark moon phase, and I encourage all of us to really celebrate that dark moon since in our society, again, which is so like first quarter moon to full moon, grow, be light. This is, well, I'm not growing and I'm not being light. I'm actually going to be dark and I'm going to rest. I'm going to draw this back in. And it's so essential
Mm.
as we head into that new moon. So maybe just as our last exercise, just imagine that sphere. And you just imagine it being a quarter lit. Just imagine drawing that light back into you. Just feeling how restorative it is. And that's what this rest is. It's drawing the light back in so that you can begin anew. And as you do, you can even notice that once you've drawn it all back in, you're looking at that same dark sphere again. You're looking at the new moon. And that's where the cycle comes to a conclusion on Thursday, July 24th for us. That ending point, which is also a new beginning. And this is our ending point. So thank you so much
Mm.
for joining me. It's been a real pleasure, and I just love the cosmic timing of this.
It's been so beautiful, and I wish I could stay because there's so much I want to ask and share. But yeah, as I said, I need to jump on another call, but we'll be in touch via email, Patrick. Thank you so much. And please, Anita, if Patrick, if you have another minute, stay
Yeah,
on and
hey,
I'll
Yeah,
close the
I have a
recording.
question, Patrick. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
sure.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sarah. Huge love.